you know, his songs and the studios over at American. And as it developed, Alex started finding his own voice and writing some songs. What do you recall, you know, John, just sort of being around Memphis and the Box Tops?
Well, the first time that I met Alex was actually at a Box Top session, because Dan had started to bring his rhythm tracks over to Ardent, and he would transfer these 4-track things to 8-track and then add overdubs. So Cry Like a Baby was one of the first ones that we worked on. And my first memory of Alex as a teenage kid, he's sitting on the floor in the corner, you know, waiting for somebody to say, "Okay, Alex, it's time for you to go sing." And, you know, we did a lot of those sessions for Dan. Gee, he was nocturnal. Boy, he'd be there mixing till 3 or 4 a.m. But, yeah, Alex, you know, as the thing went on, as the whole Box Tops franchise went on, I think Alex made no secret of the fact that he was frustrated because he was writing songs and, you know, had, you know, good material, and, you know, little, if any, got recorded. And I think that was, you know, as he sort of really found his voice and his writing talents, that was a frustration.
In, you know, in the process of sort of touring the world with the Box Tops and playing shows, Alex came into contact with the Beach Boys, and I never heard him talk about it directly, but also he was hanging around Dennis Wilson, and also hanging around Dennis Wilson at the time was Charles Manson, so it's a unique meeting of the minds there. But did Alex ever mention?
We were going to keep this upbeat.
Yeah.
No, actually, but during the disc, John talking, I remembered a story that Alex told me about Charles Manson, and so I mean we can get into telling stories, but it was pretty funny because, you know, we all know Alex to some extent, and and his character and how he responds to different commands, you might say. But he was staying with Dennis Wilson, and I hope I remember this correctly, and Charles Manson was there. And Charles Manson gives Alex an order, or a grocery order, and items to pick up at the grocery store. And it was San Francisco, and, you know, it's hilly. And so Alex makes his way to the grocery store, and on the list is, you know, a gallon of milk. Well, Alex elects not to pick up the milk because it's heavy. And you know, he apparently had to walk up a few hills or something to get back with the groceries, and he got back and he said, you know, Charles was really upset about that. But I'd love to have seen the look on both of their faces at the time.
Yeah, Manson had met his match. So obviously, you know, and we're moving along here because we want to talk about, you know, a lot about Big Star and the entirety of Alex's life. But obviously, towards the end of the Box Tops kind of came to an end in 1970, I believe, and Alex sort of ended up in New York for the first time, first of 2 kind of stays there, and it was obviously a pretty important period. He came into contact, playing a lot of folk music, came into contact with Roger McGuinn and folks like Bud Scapa, writers like that, and that's where the transition, I think, in some ways, of the Box Tops Alex and the voice and the sound you hear to the Alex that eventually you hear on Big Star. Talk a little bit about, Jody, you guys in the sort of nascent pre-Big Star version, I don't know if it was Icewater or Rock City, went up there and visited Alex, correct, when you were in New York?
We did, and I don't.
And Andy, or yeah.
It was Andy, Steve Ray, John Dando, and Chris and I all went up. And to tell you, I don't. We visited with some record labels and played some, you know, songs for them, and I just have a vague recollection. I think we stayed at the Chelsea, and but I don't remember seeing Alex during that trip. But I think was Chris staying in Alex's.
I did, exactly, yeah. I think
apartment.
they stayed together and were off doing their thing, and we were stuck having to do the...
But I remember there was a double bed in the room in the Chelsea, and John Dando and Steve Ray and I all shared the bed. John Dando was a pretty big guy. And, it was that was a fun trip, but for the life of me, I don't remember.
Well, John Fry
seeing Alex.
might be able to chip in, because I think actually it was during that stay that Chris Bell and Alex sort of first started talking, and in some ways the seeds of Big Star and their collaboration was started up. John Fry, what do you remember about that, or in general?
Sure. Just to fill in one little thing, before Alex went to New York for that extended stay.
Oh, right, yeah.
He did a solo record with Terry Manning producing, which wasn't released until much later. We tried to place it, and Atlantic was interested, and the Beach Boys label Brother was interested, but it had great songs and performances on it, I think. And then he went up into the folk scene. Keith Sykes, another Memphian, was up there for about the same time, and they were great buddies. But Steve Ray and Andy and I guess Jody had done these tapes, which Chris Bell had done these tapes, which they titled Ice Water, and went to New York thinking, they were going to call on A&R people and hopefully get it placed, and it was uniformly rejected as sounding too much like the Beatles. Go figure. But about that time, Al Bell from Stax had started talking to us at Ardent about having a rock brand, and had offered us the opportunity to sign anybody we wanted to do the recording and creative side, and that they would do the marketing, promotion, and distribution. And so, I think Chris, knew that was on the table and coming up, and probably the first discussions that he had with Alex about returning to Memphis and joining a band were during that New York Ice Water shopping.
Right. And to kind of back up, I'm assuming most of the people who are here sort of know the basic story of Big Star and Chris Bell, who obviously passed away in 1978. But in terms of that period, basically John kind of ran a recording school for local musicians, and out of that group of people came Jody and Andy and Chris Bell, and the sort of prehistory of Big Star has different kind of recording things. But Jody and Andy, talk a little bit about kind of where you guys were at. You had been working, and Alex being a sort of established star at that point, or having had been one, the prospect of him joining the band, or getting together with you guys, what was that like for you, Andy, in terms of this?
Well, we've been, the three of us, Chris and Jody and I, have been struggling for some time playing these awful little fraternity parties at local colleges and stuff like that, and department store openings and those sorts of gigs. And we had been got our foot in the door at Ardent a little bit, and by taking John's famous recording course, if you're lucky, you got a key to the studio, which was a major step forward. But just the notion of, well, here's Alex, he's back in town, and adding him to the band was like, oh wow, that would be the thing that would push us over the top, hopefully, and actually put us in a position where we actually could get in, record a LP, and do something with it, and people would listen to it. And so obviously that was a big plus if we could make it happen. And ultimately, Chris and Alex did so. And
so much has been written and talked about the relationship between Chris and Alex. And Chris was an incredibly talented person in his own right, and had labored in a way for many years on this project, which sort of led to and became the first Big Star record. Talk a little bit about what you saw as the dynamic between Chris and Alex. I think Chris had a very romanticized vision of Chilton Bell, or Bell Chilton, in terms of the songwriting credits mirroring Lennon McCartney. John or Jody, talk about a little bit about, it is in Alex's life a very short period, actually, relatively speaking, a period of maybe 18 months, 2 years tops, where the four of you and Alex and Chris had that, collaboration. But, this room is filled with people who are here, in large part because of that. Talk a little bit about, the experience of Chris and Alex, once you guys got it together.
My recollection is more general and stuff, but something more specific was there was a building next door to the studio, and we got to practice. And I remember